Yo, YouTube, what's going on? It's your boy Salvation Elite. We are back with another video, guys. And man, today we're still talking about the Call of Duty League, of course. We're getting a lot of videos coming out. Tomorrow night is the podcast. We're going to go in deep dive in a lot of these topics and a lot of other things. And then the following days, learn from the pros, kind of the revival of the series now that we have CODcaster back and actual matches that pro teams are playing in. So a lot of exciting stuff is going down. And today, man, we're talking about the top best performances of the weekend and some of the things that we learned the most about certain players and certain things this weekend. So in the video yesterday, we went through some of like the most important teams and the biggest team things. And one thing that I didn't do yesterday was that I didn't do a little bit of a montage of COD Minnesota because I ran out of time yesterday. So today we're rolling that montage. So without further ado, let's roll it. There it is, baby. COD Minnesota. It was a really great event. I thoroughly enjoyed my time. I left, like I said in yesterday's video, very optimistic about the future of the Call of Duty League. Since I was able to go back like Sunday night and Monday morning and go back and watch some of these VODs, there was a lot to break down, a lot that went on. And then now examining some of the stat sheets that are finally coming out about the event. Man, there were some big time performances this weekend. Even though we only saw 2 matches from all the teams, there were some big surprises and some big time plays from some players. So without further ado, let's just talk about them. So first, let's start with some of the bad performances or some of the things that we just did not expect from certain players, and it went downhill real quick for some of these guys. So this is what you guys are seeing right here. These are the overall KD leaderboards. These are the bottom 10 this weekend. I don't want to overreact to the stats because stats don't tell the whole picture, especially just the KD leaderboards, because that definitely does not show the whole picture. But it does give some insight into how some of these matches went for the guys. And as you guys can see here, it was a rough weekend for Aches, Shotzzy, Accuracy, Tiege, Zero, JCap, Temp, Clayster, Looney, Jerd, Illy, and many more. Attached, just barely missed the list. Slasher, Enable, Hook. Not ideal for a lot of these guys, but I mean, the biggest ones were near the bottom there. The below 0.8s are pretty significant. Like, that's pretty bad. And I mean, Aches is at a 0.68 KD overall on the weekend. That is rough, to say the least. I mean, of course, some people would go out there and expect that from Aches to not be performing at the highest of levels, but that's definitely way below what anyone thought potentially would happen with Aches this weekend. But Gorillas actually as a squad didn't look that bad, which is pretty ironic. So if Aches can start figuring things out and really start getting going, I mean, who knows, maybe the Gorillas could be a really good team with Aches, who's dropping like a 1 KD at some point. And there's some names there you're like, wow, that was a bad weekend for them. Specifically, like Shotzzy really stands out. Accuracy, Tiege. Temp is on that list. Zero. But for the most part, a lot of those guys at the bottom of that list are guys that you're really surprised to see down there, and not an ideal weekend for them at all. So now sticking with some of the bad performances of the weekend, we'll scroll down here to the hardpoint plus minuses, which is where you see some of the biggest problems for OpTic and for Aches especially. I mean, you're looking down here and there are some tragedies here at the bottom of the leaderboard. Aches was minus 50 in plus minus, which is real rough. And so I mean, you got Decimate and Aches there at the bottom of the leaderboard. Not what you want to see if you're the LA Gorillas. And then you've got JCap down there, Tiege for OpTic, which is definitely a big time problem in hardpoint for them. And then Accuracy just having a rough go at it as well, minus 24 for him. And then you got Illy, Temp, Shotzzy, Clay, Jerd. So, you know, a lot of the same names in the hardpoint. What you'd expect to see a lot of correlation between the hardpoint plus minuses and the overall KDs of the event. So moving on to domination, we can check out some of these plus minuses. Still pretty surprising, and there's some big time names at the bottom of the leaderboard here. As you guys can see right here, I mean, not an ideal weekend for Shotzzy and for Crim when it came to domination. Minus 30 and minus 19 for them. And again, you look at some of those names on the list and they're pretty surprising. Like Hook's down there, Tiege is down there again. So some big time names at the bottom of this leaderboard. And again, for Dallas, they put against the 2 best teams in the league. You can't really rip on them too hard considering the competition they were playing. But at the end of the day, it is telling where they were struggling and where they were really having some problems. Domination was a big time problem for Shotzzy and Crim. And then you look at the S&D plus minus, and this is where Enable's biggest problem was. He was not looking good in the S&D category this weekend. He was minus 13 on the weekend. Aches is down there as well in search, slacked, accuracy, a sim attached, Tej again. So there's a lot of names that I kind of been repeating a little bit here in the bottom of these leaderboards. Not what you want to see, and those are going to be some guys that we're going to be keeping an eye on and looking for that improvement in their game. So now we're wrapping back to some of the best players of the weekend, which is what we're seeing right here. My goodness, there were some big time plays. This is the overall KD leaderboards for the weekend. We got Wuskins at a 1.6. He was on fire in that first match against the Subliners. He was literally killing it. Then, of course, you got Simp, Cellium, Formal, and then Assault, actually, here at rounding out the top 5 KDs of the weekend. And you've got some more interesting names down here. GodRX, Methods, Arcitys, Dens, Mox to round out the top 10. A really interesting weekend. Again, I'm going to keep emphasizing that it's definitely skewed based off the opponents you played, and it's only 2 matches. So the future is going to tell us a lot more about how these teams played, and over the next 2 months, we're going to really figure out where these teams are at. But this does give you good insight, especially for a guy like Simp, who in our minds played some pretty tough competition this weekend, still dropped a 1.58 on the weekend. Like, that's just absolutely ridiculous. He looked incredible. Cellium looked very, very good as well. Formal doing his thing for the Huntsmen. So statistically, KD wise, they look fantastic. And I mean, in the gameplay that you guys have been seeing, you know, you can tell how good these teams and these individuals have been playing as a whole. So moving on to hardpoint, as you guys are seeing here, again, Simp was dominant. This is the plus minus for hardpoint, a plus 51 hardpoint plus minus. Cellium was number 2 at 32. Then Arcitys is right there at 31. GodRX 29, and then surprisingly Dens is at 24, which is really surprising. And then you got some more good players: Skies, Assault, Mox, Alex, and Dashy to round out the top 10. Dashy was definitely a little bit surprising for me considering OpTic's performance this weekend, but I mean, at the same time, the stats don't lie. He statistically in hardpoint, he played pretty well. Obviously, there's a lot more to the story than just that most of the time, but on paper, he played a pretty good weekend. So then in domination, the plus minus looked a little bit different. I mean, here we got Wuskins at number 1, 28. Then we got Formal at 26. Then Methods at 17. Gunless at 17. Octane at 16. So a little bit of a cluster at the top. Assault, Aqua, Abizi, Kismet, and then Simp to round out the top 10. So I mean, overall, Wuskins was like the biggest surprise of the weekend for how well he played. But I mean, again, in that first series, Wuskins was just so dominant against New York that the stats just show how great he was in that series. And that came as a big surprise to a lot of people. I don't think really very many people saw Wuskins as like the high upside type player. He's been generally in his career more of like a really, really solid starter that assists the star players in making the plays and making things happen. But he made it happen this weekend, and you gotta be really, really happy for him. He's a good guy and totally deserves the success. I mean, I think having Octane up here with how poorly Seattle played as a whole, I mean, you can look here, you see him in the top 5 in all these categories. It only makes sense that he's going to be pretty high in the plus minus as well. And it, you know, it's just a constant reminder that Octane's talent is definitely there. It is going to take some time for Seattle to figure things out as a squad. So the S&D KDs is pretty telling with how good Atlanta is in the game mode. I mean, again, they played against Empire, who we thought would be a pretty good search team, and then they played against OpTic LA, you know, which is definitely debatable, but by no means are those individuals on that team bad search players. And so you see here, I mean, Atlanta dominated the search and destroy category. In the KDs, they had the top 4 KDs, and then Scump coming in at number 5. Again, KDs, you're only playing 2 matches. That's why Major Maniac's KD's a 14. But at the same time, like the plus minuses, you see Major Maniac here at 13, Simp at 11, and then Classic actually at 11, Scump at 10, and then Skies at 10 as well. But I did want to spend a little bit more time on some of these other categories here, because in Search and Destroy, it definitely is important to figure out who's making the plays and who's making the biggest impact on the map. And so you guys can see here the opening duels 1. This is the first blood opening duels, and then opening duels 1 per round. So there's actually some differences here. Aches, pretty effective here with the opening duels 1. He's pretty effective in Search and Destroy. I mean, it makes sense. He plays tactical positions. He definitely sets up pretty well to get those first picks. GodRX, though, 6 first blood duels 1. It's a 4-way tie for first here with Kismet, Saints, and with Slack, and then with 5 players tied at 5. And then you go down to the kills per round here, and you can see where Priestahh is just so deadly. I mean, this dude gets kills on the board in Search and Destroy. 1.25 kills per round for Priestahh. Scump really looking good in Search this event, a 1.2 kills per round. Then you got Assault, Major Maniac, and then Classic up here on the board as well. And then Simp coming in at number 6. I mean, so those are definitely some of the guys that played some big time events. Let's go through the top 5 players I'm most impressed with this event. Number 1 has to be Simp. He looked so good. Number 2, I want to say Wuskins, because of what he really showed us this event with how dominant he can be inside of a match. And the domination, no pun intended, because the domination performances he put off was really impressive. And then at number 3, I think I'm going to say GodRX, because in Hardpoint, as you guys are seeing here, he led the event in Hardpoint kills per 10 minutes. So he was really playing aggressive, getting into important gunfights and creating pressure on the map. And then in Search and Destroy, he was out here getting the opening duels and the first bloods, which are so important in winning those rounds. And so I'm going to say GodRX at 3. Then at 4, you got to put Cellium. He played incredible. FaZe looked so dominant as a team, and Cellium was a huge part of that. I mean, again, the hardpoint KD is a 1.43, which is absolutely ridiculous. And then in Search and Destroy, a 5 KD as well, so he was staying alive and making plays for FaZe. You got to respect that, and he looked really fantastic. And again, a big reason for why the FaZe roster looks so dominant right now. And then at number 5, I think I'm going to say Kismet. He was a top 10 plus minus in Search and Domination, and Paris really came out and surprised as a whole. And I thought Kismet was a big reason for why that happened and played a big part in the team. And I mean, this kind of goes to the whole Paris roster because of how surprising the end of event they had. And just a shout out to him, because I think he played really well in both those game modes. Hardpoint, I think, you know, could have gone a little bit better for him, but at the end of the day, he looked really impressive both in S&D and Dom, and I'm looking forward to seeing what Paris can do in the future. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. We talked about a lot of individual players, and then in tomorrow's podcast, we're going to be deep diving into a whole bunch of things about this event, a lot of the pro scene, some of the AM scene, and so many topics about the whole weekend. So I'm really excited. I think it's going to be a really big podcast. So I hope you guys tune in for it. And as always, guys, I'm your boy FaZe, and we'll see you next time. I'm out.